What is up, people? Welcome back to the channel. Thomas and Friends character arcs are notorious for their journey and their message. However, they're normally grouped in two-parters or trilogies. The topic of today's installment is not only on one of Thomas's finest, but one of the two four-part sagas in the entirety of the Thomas and Friends TV series. So let's get started for this special 10th installment on Let's Talk Thomas. What I'm calling the Granpuff Saga is a series of 4 graceful episodes revolving around the workforce on the Mid-Soda Railway, a narrow-gauge railway that ran consistently for 67 long years. Now I'll go over the visuals and music when I cover each episode individually, however, I first want to go over the way it's formatted. Of course, Thomas tells the stories of Granpuff and Sleeping Beauty back to back, but the order in which the stories actually happen is the first half of Granpuff, BULLDOG, You Can't Win, the second half of Granpuff, and then concluding with Sleeping Beauty. Now with all this said, let's really begin with the classic that started it all. Granpuff is the introduction episode for the fleet of the MSR, bringing the familiar names of Duke, Stuart, and Falcon into every child's mind. It's also established that Stuart and Falcon have a certain feeling towards Duke. They are fond of him, but they also think he's old, outdated, fragile, and a bit irritating. You could probably make a decent comparison to your grandparents. And while they do tease Duke often, they work in relative peace on the MSR together. Relative peace. But then comes the topic of Smudger. Duke tells a story about an engine who had a mechanical flaw and with that, a massive ego. And it's found out that the workmen were tired of his bullshit and just made him the base of a generator. And that's the asshole treatment right there. And, if you know what happens at the end, then you know the fate of this guy. Anyway, after Duke's traumatizing story, we enter a beautifully modeled montage of the engines working various parts of the railway, where the narrator says,
engines, and all 3 were happy together for many years.
It's during these many years that the events of Bulldogs and You Can't Win transpire. But then the tone changes. Suddenly, now many years since the beginning of the episode, the tone has gone from light-hearted and pure to dark and concerning. I mean, even when Smudger got transformed, it was treated in such a light that it was like it was glossed over. But here, the music changes, the narration changes, the tone itself does a complete 180. After that fact, it's shown that the railway is shutting down and the engines are being sold. All except for Duke. Just like Stuart and Falcon did all those years ago, he was judged based on his age. And after going through all those years together, the younger engines tell Duke that they'll find him a nice new railway where he can keep them in order again. And with heavy hearts, they leave. They leave the MSR, they leave Duke, they leave it all. The episode ends with Duke getting sealed in his old shed, and his former driver and fireman leaving him to go find new work. Over time, the comings of Mother Nature covered Duke's shed in various amounts of wildlife, leaving him sealed inside, asleep, waiting in the hope of being found one day and finding his way to the new railway Stuart and Falcon had promised him all that time ago.
That's not a happy ending.
And that's something I appreciate about this episode. Not every Thomas episode has to end on a panning out shot of everybody laughing. You see, Mattel, this is what we call good Thomas and Friends. Another thing I want to say, BULLDOG and You Can't Win weren't necessary in the TV series Granpuff Saga. Now before you trundle on to the comments, the word I used was necessary. The Granpuff Saga could have very easily been a 2-parter, with only Granpuff and Sleeping Beauty. But tell me this, when does David Mitton not go above and beyond the call to action? If the answer isn't never, then take the cap off, you 9-year-old, and go back to Chuggington. We don't want you here. Okay, now that they're gone, let's proceed. BULLDOG is the first of the stories that is completely revolved around the workings of the MSR. Falcon is given a job to do, but is told that he has to do it with Duke. And since this takes place closer to the first half of Granpuff, Falcon hates this idea. Duke tells Falcon to focus on the track rather than gawking at the view. I mean, can you blame him? Look at this shit. But what does Falcon say in reply?
How can I learn the route with you lumbering ahead and blocking the view?
And whoop-de-doo, just like that, they're on their way. The journey continues through a beautiful montage of them puffing through the Mid-Soda countryside, and Duke keeps reminding Falcon to look at the track. And what does Falcon do? Well, clearly not look at the track. With Falcon dangling from the cliff's edge, Duke holds on for dear life, but then, bum bum bum, he has no water. However, a nearby cottage is able to help out with that. And with a full tanker of water, Duke is able to haul Falcon back onto safe ground so they can finish the journey. Ending with Falcon learning a valuable lesson and Duke being able to prove himself in the process. It's a bit of a basic episode, not too complex, but it further evaluates Falcon's potential respect for Duke. Now, I'm not even gonna lie, this episode just tugs at my heartstrings. The first minute is just beautiful. Whether it's the gracious model work or the enchanting music, the first minute of this episode is just It shows that Duke has great commitment to his passengers and even thinks of them as close friends. It's so moving that I genuinely felt sad when the narrator said he didn't feel too well. He is shown resting on a siding after his crew gave him a good cleaning, until...
Hello, Granpuff, he teased. Are you short of puff?
Stuart comes up and starts being an asshole. Of course, Duke defends himself, but apparently to no success, as Stuart essentially tells him that he'll have to come to terms with the future sooner or later. And Duke responds, well, in a very Duke fashion. We then get a montage of Duke pulling passengers enjoying himself, and it's very nice. The music, the visuals, everything. But it turns from nice music to more intense music. Not like intense, but the key does change for a good few measures to represent Duke's struggle up the hill. When he reaches the station, Duke's driver informs the passengers that two engines will come to make sure that their train isn't too late. Ah yes, the two stooges. After reaching the next station, however, Falcon leaves the main plot and Stuart takes over at the front. But little did he know, Duke had this whole episode on cruise control. Nearing the middle of the journey, Duke roared and strained and pulled the train like he was the only one doing any of the work, and the sound echoed amongst the cliffside. And by the time they had reached the station, at Stuart's dismay, Duke's plan had worked. The passengers had bought it. Now there's no overarching moral to this story, but it teaches Stuart to never underestimate the sheer willpower of Duke. And Duke proves once more that he is a force to be reckoned with. Sleeping Beauty is the climactic end to the Granpuff saga. The episode starts with a bit of a dark but poetic summary on the events that took place beforehand. It is then shown that a good few railway enthusiasts want to finally uncover what truly happened to Duke. With multiple maps of the MSR, one of the enthusiasts points to a good place to look for the old engine. And just like that, they're on their way. On something that very easily could have been just another wild goose chase. Days went by before they even found their way to the MSR, but finding Duke was an excursion in itself. With them climbing over hills and making their way through ditches, it wasn't exactly looking the best. But then...
We've found him! We've found our Sleeping Beauty!
The enthusiast with the woolly hat had dropped in Duke's tomb. It is shown that Duke has been riddled with cobwebs and rust, and after just a tad bit of catching up, Duke learns that his roots never truly left him, as Stuart and Falcon, now known as Sir Handel and Peter Sam, never actually forgot about him.
So they did remember.
Then torn out of his shed and brought back to civilization. In a wonderful relay of events, we see a montage of Duke's journey home. And after all that, back at the Skarloey Railway sheds, the three OG MSRs finally reunite. And in their cheeky fashion, Sir Handel and Peter Sam tease Duke, saying that now they can keep him in order. Of course Duke, being Duke, wishes them off, takes it all in, and for the first time in years, goes happily to sleep. Now that is a story. Sir Handel and Peter Sam both get shown up by Duke in their own ways and steadily grow as characters, and Duke proves himself worthy of their respect again and again. A full-blown character arc for 3 engines. Now how many Thomas character arcs can say they've done that? In Granpuff, these two are making fun of Duke, chanting about how he goes on forever, and by Sleeping Beauty, they understand why he goes on forever. Because he's a witty, resilient little engine who never lets the fact that he's old get the better of him. He's willing to do anything for his passengers, for his friends, for his railway. His legacy lives on forever. And if that isn't one hell of a story, then god damn it, I don't know what is. Yeah. It's probably safe to assume that Smudger's pretty dead. Well. Big number 10. Honestly didn't think I'd make it this far. Thanks for watching. Since I announced we hit 300 subscribers, we've gained like over 40 in like the past like week and a half. So it's kind of lit. But yeah, I don't really have anything else to say. So as always, I'll see you when I decide to upload again.